spotting anxiety, PMS, insomnia, and irritability. You've probably been told that this is just normal PMS, but truly, these are messages from progesterone, and today we're decoding them. Welcome to the She Sacral podcast, where we help women recover from hormonal burnout. I am your host, Lindsay Christian, Hormonal Burnout Recovery Guide for Women. So today we're going to be breaking down the true meaning of progesterone, what it's really telling you on a deep emotional level, but we're going to break down what it means for women who have PMDD, struggle with fertility, going through perimenopause, and how progesterone impacts your brain. So let's go ahead and dive in. First, let's just break down the word progesterone. Progesterone is broken down into three parts. Pro, which means in favor for or to support. Gestare, which means to carry, hold, or to sustain. And own, which just means hormone. So the word progesterone literally means the hormone that supports what is being carried, not just in pregnancy, but also your emotional load, your responsibilities, your energy, your boundaries, and your sense of safety. So let's talk about the signs and symptoms that our body can be showing us when progesterone is low. All of these symptoms are prone to show up in the second half of your cycle or the last week to 2 weeks of your cycle. 1. Anxiety, especially at night. Waking up between 2 and 4 a.m., spotting before your next period, irritability, emotional instability, and trouble with pregnancies. And the message behind all of this is that you are carrying too much alone. Now, when progesterone is high, which is very rare and usually only happens in times of pregnancy or if you're taking synthetic forms of progesterone. Symptoms can look like deep drowsiness or feeling like you're sedated and slowed digestion. Natural high progesterone rarely causes any issues just because it's only created in a very small area of the body for a very temporary amount of time. But low progesterone is where we're really going to deal with those super uncomfortable symptoms. So what would it feel like if progesterone was balanced? In the last 2 weeks of your cycle, you'd feel steady, grounded, responsive over reactive, and feeling safe in your own body. So let's shift for a little bit and talk about how progesterone impacts our brain. Progesterone speaks directly through our GABA receptors. This is your area of the brain that helps you to calm down. And this is why progesterone helps with anxiety, overstimulation, racing thoughts, our sleep, and our mood regulation. It also impacts our hippocampus, which is the area of our brain that's responsible for our emotional memory. Now, we also discussed this in our previous episode on estrogen and how it impacts the brain. But estrogen also stimulates the hippocampus, but just in a different way. Estrogen lights up your hippocampus in a way that heightens emotional resonance, strengthens memory, deepens empathy, and helps you to make connections. But progesterone stimulates it in a different way. Instead of activating it, progesterone soothes the hippocampus. This helps with downshifting, stay grounded, feel safe. So when estrogen and progesterone are both balanced, that's when you're going to get emotional clarity, emotional steadiness, and feeling grounded and calm in your nervous system and intuition. But here's the thing. Progesterone is oftentimes very low. And when progesterone is low, it impacts the brain in a very different way. Emotional memories feel louder, heavier, and much harder to process. And progesterone also impacts what's called your hypothalamus. This is kind of like your control panel in your brain. It regulates sleep, temperature, hunger, and your hormones. So when progesterone is low, all of this gets totally disrupted. So how is progesterone made exactly? Progesterone is a very sensitive and somewhat fragile hormone. Unlike estrogen and testosterone that's made in abundance of areas of your body, progesterone is only created after ovulation, which is created from a temporary organ called the corpus luteum. Having enough cholesterol, key nutrients like B vitamins, zinc, and magnesium, steady blood sugar, and a regulated nervous system. But here's something I want you to know. There's a big hormone that also uses these exact same nutrients, and that is cortisol. So if we're under a ton of stress and cortisol is being activated even more, it's going to steal all of that and make your progesterone much lower. So many women have no idea that this is actually happening and just chalk it up to, I'm just an anxious person, or I suffer with anxiety, or I suffer with depression, or I just have really terrible mood swings. And sometimes we can take on even more heaviness because we think that it's just in our minds. We can get frustrated with ourselves and think that we're not being positive enough, or we're not doing enough, or that we're too weak. But truly, your body is asking for more support, nourishment, and to slow down. I struggled with this for years and I had no idea what was going on. I would notice that it wasn't always the same level of intensity every single month, but man, when it was intense, it was super intense and it was very scary. And it's just one of those things that maybe you don't feel safe or comfortable enough to share. In those moments that feel so heavy, or maybe you feel that drop before your next cycle, and you've dealt with this enough times to know that once your cycle starts, you're going to start feeling better again. So you just hold all of that in because you don't want to alarm anyone. You don't want to freak anybody out because you're like, "Ugh, well, I know in a few days or maybe even a week, I'm not going to feel like this." But in those moments, it can be terrifying to hold on to everything that you're holding on to and to carry those emotions. And also the things that happen in your relationships, or fear that you can't have a normal or decent relationship. It can almost create unnecessary traumas that don't need to be there simply because our hormones are not being nourished and supported. So this is one of the main reasons of why I've created my community, the Pleasure Wire, to support women in this space, to know that one, it is not just you. It is not just in your head. It is not because you're not positive enough. This is a body-led experience. This is not a mindset experience. And there's not enough information, there's not enough support for women to understand how their bodies work. So if you are wanting to learn how to nourish your hormones, how to support your body, how to regulate your nervous system, so that way you can enjoy the benefits and the power that comes with being a woman, then click the link down below to join my free community, the Pleasure Wire. I am so excited to have you and I can't wait to meet you. So we talked a lot about how progesterone is made, but let's talk a little bit about progesterone and pregnancy. So progesterone's deepest, most biological role is to keep the womb stable, strong, and safe, to be able to protect new life. But here's the part that most people never explain. Your body will not hold what you do not have capacity to hold. Pregnancy requires steadiness, safety, nourishment, rest, and emotional support. And of course, consistency. So progesterone is that hormone that checks and says, do we have enough stability to truly carry something so precious? So sometimes we can feel really frustrated and depressed and really down, especially when we're struggling with fertility, because we feel like our body is failing us. But progesterone is not judging you, it is protecting you. It is sending you the message to say, let's build safety first. Because you deserve to be held before asking your body to hold someone else. And I think that sometimes we feel or have this belief that, well, I'm not a baby anymore. I'm not a child anymore. I don't need to be nurtured. I don't need to be cared for. But in fact, we do. We always need to be nurtured and nourished and cared for until our last day on this earth. So now I want to shift gears a little bit and give some love to my women that struggle with PMDD, because this is one of the clearest messages from progesterone. Many times PMDD is thought to just be from low progesterone. And it's true that low progesterone can trigger some of those severe symptoms, but it's not the root. The root of PMDD is progesterone sensitivity and nervous system dysregulation. Your brain becomes hypersensitive to the rise and fall of progesterone. And this happens when you've been carrying too much for too long. Your nervous system is exhausted. You grew up in a chaotic environment. You've experienced stress or trauma. You've always had to be the strong one. And your life feels unsupported. So when progesterone rises, instead of you getting that calm effect, your brain gets overstimulated. And then when it falls, your brain feels unsupported and unsafe. So the message that PMDD is sending you is, I cannot carry anything else. I've spoken to so many women, especially women that are married with their husbands, and maybe there's just a little bit of imbalance with the responsibility in the household. And a lot of times I've noticed that so many women feel like they're carrying all the responsibility of the house. Maybe her partner has lost their job and she's having to work more, or maybe she's having to carry too much with parenting, or maybe something that's there just doesn't feel as supported. And during that last week of her cycle, or last 2 weeks even, she's very angry at her husband. She's carrying rage. Comes up because she's literally screaming, I can't take it anymore. I can't hold all this together anymore. And her body's reflecting that when that progesterone drops. Now, progesterone will naturally drop at the very end of the cycle, so that way we would start a new cycle. But how that's typically supposed to happen is that it's supposed to carry us for that full 2 weeks. And then in a matter of hours, it dips and then estrogen picks right back up. So it's supposed to be a very, very short amount of time that we feel that dip. So to feel it for a whole week or even a whole 2 weeks is definitely a sign that our body is super depleted and we've got way too much on our plate. And we try to fight through it with caffeine and override our body's cry for help when we need to rest. We try to just push through. We get down on ourselves. We feel like we're failing, but our body is so powerful and has so much wisdom. It is truly just asking for support. That's all. So now I want to dive in and I want to talk about women that are going through perimenopause. Perimenopause is the transition towards menopause, and at some point we're all going to go through it, right? Hopefully we can all just get through it a little more gracefully. We can learn how to support our bodies through that transition. And again, if you're needing or looking for more support with that, you could join the community down below. But progesterone is the first to go. A lot of times when we think of menopause or we think of perimenopause, we think it's estrogen that declines. We're like, oh, I'm going to get drier. I'm going to, lose a lot of my glow and my collagen. I'm going to lose all of my estrogen. One, we know that we have our backup estrogen that is built in our adrenal glands. So we still have some estrogen, even though it's a much weaker form. It's nowhere near the potent form of estradiol, which is the estrogen that's created in our ovaries. We still got a little something. But progesterone just, it drops completely because we have less opportunities for ovulation because our egg reserve is going down. There's just simply not any more eggs to release. And it's not just going to be where you just stop ovulating and then that's it. It's going to be up and down. So sometimes there's going to be ovulation, sometimes not. And that's because our body become so sensitive to stress and our blood sugar as we age and as we get older. So ovulation can easily become more inconsistent. And that's why you'll notice the waves and the rise and falls of the moods and the symptoms that you can go through from month to month. So this is why women that are going through perimenopause can actually notice heavier periods, waking up in the middle of the night more often, anxiety, feeling on edge, feeling that sudden sense of overwhelm, and you just feel like something is wrong with you, but it's not. Hormones impact our brain and how we feel in our nervous system and our bodies so much. So it's so important that we learn how to work with our bodies in this state. So your body is not falling apart. This is just the time that your body is revealing to you everything that you've been holding and carrying this whole time. So during this transition, perimenopause is actually asking you, what am I no longer willing to hold, to carry? What responsibilities am I ready to release, to be done with? And what would support me better now? So it's the shift from I must hold everything for everyone to I must hold myself. So while perimenopause feels super chaotic, if we learn how to tune into it, it's actually clarity. Not loss, but liberation. This is when your body is guiding you back to rest, to safety, to nourishment, and to support. So now that we've truly explored progesterone, we know that progesterone does not lie. She reveals where you're supported and where you're carrying too much. And her message is gentle but honest, which is you deserve to be held. I hope that you enjoyed this episode because up next, we're going to meet a new guest speaker that's going to dive in and talk about fertility all together. So I hope you're really excited for that. If that applies to you, definitely be sure to subscribe and follow and turn your notifications on so you know when that episode is released. Thank yourself for showing up today and thank you for tuning into the She Sacral podcast.